Hello, everyone. And today I have finally somebody who can help me against these idiots.
You're beyond help.
No, I'm not beyond help. Got one of my oldest friends in the world, one of my best friends in the world, Dan. How you doing, Dan?
Absolutely, Eck. It's always a pleasure. And yes, we go way back, and our hockey stories are endless.
Absolutely endless. We've played on more teams together. We've watched more games together than you can possibly imagine. So,
right.
Russ, you're gonna start us off today though with Russ, something to say.
So, a famous baseball trade was made on this day in 1971. The Mets traded Nolan Ryan for Jim Fregosi. I heard it from the time I was 8 years old until pretty much now. Yeah. But over the years, I've had conversations with different people about it. The first one I had a conversation with was Joe Pignatano. He was the Mets bullpen guy. And what he had told me, I sat at an event with him, a Met event at a table, and he told me, look, Nolan Ryan was a Texas guy. He just didn't like New York. He roomed with Seaver. He became friendly. Their wives became friendly, but he never felt comfortable in New York. So he said this was always going to happen. He was surprised he lasted that long. So didn't mean they had to make a bad trade, but they made a bad trade. Now, on the Jim Fregosi side, knowing that he was a Phillies manager, in 93, I was working at a hotel. I was at the Holiday Inn, which was a Hilton before it, right next to Vet Stadium. And so that season, that 93 season, I was there right up until the playoffs. So when the baseball season started, a lot of players moved into the hotel, and they literally just lived there, and they would walk over to the Vet. And that's, pretty much what their existence was. Now, Fregosi and Dennis Menke, the hitting coach, they lived there full time. So one day, Jim Fregosi and I would talk every once in a while, and he knew I was a Met fan. And so he said, one day we're going to talk about the Mets. And I'm like, okay. And so we sat down one day for breakfast, and we started talking about it. And we didn't talk about the trade, but what we talked about is in 73, the Mets were in the World Series, and they lost to the A's in 7 games. But what we talked about was Fregosi's importance to the team. And he was telling me, oh, yeah, I was really important with that team, and I was this and I was that. And I'm trying to like literally trying to be nice to him because Wayne Garrett was really the third baseman, and it wasn't Fregosi. He was more like a bench guy at that point. But it was an interesting kind of weird kind of conversation where I had to sort of be nice, where X not used to that, but I was nice to him. And and it was just one of those things where he just basically had this different opinion of himself. And so it was something that I always sort of laughed at. The other weird thing, this would have been weird because I was up at the time. I was managing that hotel, but I was also up for a job with the Phillies as the ticket manager. And he's the one who recommended me because he saw the way I ran the front desk and ran everything. I didn't get that job, but just imagine if I would have been still like in the Phillies.
How your life would have changed.
It would have been different. I still would have been a Met fan, though. That wouldn't have changed.
You might have gone into baseball, though, like more than hockey.
Yeah, maybe. You never know. Although that is still the year that at the front desk, the Flyers fan club was there, or a Flyers fan club, and they had a meeting, and I saw somebody who was wearing a button, 1940 forever, and I still have the button. And I said, how much for that button? And he goes, why? And I'm like, I'm a Ranger fan, and I'm going to break the curse. I bought the button. Next year, they won the Stanley Cup. Wow. So
it was that easy. If the Rangers, then Glenn Sather wouldn't have had to waste so much money if he just could have bought you the button. That would have been
Well, right. If you would have gotten that job, you would have probably been personal friends with Lenny Dykstra and Kurt Schilling. And if that's the case, you would have either owned part of the car wash that he bankrupted, or you would have been a member of that video company that Kurt Schilling bankrupted. So
I would not have been friends with Kurt Schilling. I'm going to tell you my Kurt Schilling story real quick. Okay. So Kurt Schilling stayed in the hotel, and he moved in because his house was being worked on, him and his wife. And they brought in 2 big dogs, and we weren't, especially in those days, you weren't allowed to have dogs in the hotel. And I was getting complaints about them barking and everything else. And so I had told the Schillings, you've got to do something with your dog. You can't do it. And they went over my head to the general manager. And of course, the general manager buckled and said, you could leave them. Fast forward to, I left that place. I quit, not because of that. And I'm listening to Mike and the Mad Dog on the radio one day and just driving around, and Chris Russo was complaining about the old hotel I used to work in. His 2 complaints were there were kids running around everywhere making noise. Those were Fregosi's kids. And there were dogs barking. Those were Schilling's dogs. So when I heard that on the radio,
That's funny.
I just cracked up, and I was just like, it was too much.
I can't remember the pretext of why but Russ had posted something about fake injuries on Twitter, and I put a picture of Curt Schilling's bloody sock from the 04. Now, the thing I was going to do, and I didn't have the time to do it because I just wanted to get the response up quick. I was going to I've got this app on my phone that you can put basically two photos together, and the one photo was going to be a bottle of Heinz ketchup, and the other one was going to be the bloody sock, because that's what it was. I don't care what anybody says. This guy was a fake piece of crap, and he's an a-hole of the highest order, and he just by happenstance played for the Phillies and the Red Sox.
Now, something you could tell your wife, besides getting her first Hanukkah gift tonight, is
I'm ready. I'm ready. I got
Dave Grohl and his producer are going to be doing Hanukkah, basically Jewish songs every night for the next 8 nights. It's not really Jewish songs, but it's songs by Jewish artists. They're going to cover.
Okay, yeah, like I was going to say,
doing Christmas covers,
Jew Hanukkah songs that we know.
Yeah,
of? Like
yeah. So he's going to do one for each night.
Is that who knows what else?
So, the list, he could be doing a Bob Dylan song. Bob Dylan's Jewish. Like he could do Paul Simon.
Is Carly Simon Jewish?
Carly Simon. Well, no, because she married Paul Simon, right? So
no, she married James Taylor, but
Carly Simon and Paul Simon are different Simons altogether.
Yeah,
they're different Simons. So I'm not sure. Maybe. I never knew about that one.
By the way, one of the weirdest Christmas songs of all time has got to be the Bob Dylan Christmas song.
Oh God.
You know that one?
No.
Something about the big Santa, big guess at Santa, or it's really messed up. If you want to listen to something, it's
whatever.
Yeah, Bob is right. Gene Simmons is Jewish.
Well, okay. Neil Diamond, Leonard Cohen, Dylan, Billy Joel.
Yep.
Geddy Lee. I'm sure that Dave Grohl will do a Rush song.
He'll do a Rush song for sure.
Yes, David Lee Roth. Donald Fagen from Steely.
Oh, Donald Fagen. I didn't realize that. Okay.
So there's Lenny Kravitz.
Gritty.
Yeah, he'll do the ones guitar driven. I could see him doing Kravitz before, but he might do Steely Dan. It'd be interesting if he does a Steely Dan song.
Yeah. Mark Bolan.
Who's that? I don't even know who that is.
T-Rex.
Oh, T-Rex. Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, all right. Let's start the show.
Russ Cohen. Let's see. All right. Moving on. All right. Here we go. I'm going to intro
Matthew Schneider. Yes.
Then we will introduce. I'll introduce my buddy. All right. Hello, Hockey World. It is Thursday, December 10th, which means it's one of my friends' birthdays. I should call her. Hello, Hockey World. It's Thursday, December 10th, 2020.
I'm Michael Agello, and my favorite Jewish musician is not Barry Manilow.
I'm Eric Cohen from Sportsology, and I did interview Matthew Schneider once on being inducted into the Jewish Athletes Hall of Fame. It was funny. He loved it.
And I'm Echo, and you're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday in the afternoons to fill you in on the comings and goings in the hockey world. We specialize here in off seasons because we've had off seasons for 8 of the last 10 months. And today
never let it be said that we can't stretch.
You can keep talking about hockey all the time. And one of the guys who I know more than any other in my life can talk hockey all the time as well is joining me today. One of the smartest hockey people I know, and one of my best friends in my life, Dan Wallace. How you doing, Dano?
Excellent, Eck. It's always a pleasure. For sure.
Dan's a Minnesota Wild writer for us, so we're going to get into some of the Wild stuff too. He's going to defend me again, today in every.
No wonder we get to interview Dan when.
As Dan would have defended me had I been thrown into the boards in one of our many deck hockey days. As a goalie, he would be at my back. I told me the story the other day. Do you remember the breakaway where I took the kid's head off when I just swung my stick?
Yes. Very uncharacteristic of
I got mad though.
Very passive, but not that day.
That was much more in your realm, actually.
Absolutely. There definitely was my MO for sure.
Dan
was wearing a mullet back then? Did he have a mullet?
Of course.
Okay. Oh, the mullet, absolutely.
Yeah.
Dan wore number 17 because his favorite player was Wendell Clark. Played. There we go. Another Leaf. What is that? What your favorite players too, Mike?
Oh yeah.
You and Dan, man. Yankee, Wendell Clark. Yes, and Dan played a lot like Wendell Clark. That was Dan's game. Was Wendell Clark, very Wendell Clark like.
So you punched out Ben Wilson?
Oh, that's one of my all-time favorite Flyers right there.
That's true.
If he only had hockey talent. Anyhow.
Ben Wilson had hockey talent.
No, he didn't.
What the? Come on.
And you're going to tell me Ben Wilson was a good hockey player now?
He was a good hockey player. He was not without skill. He was a skilled defenseman. I mean, I'm not saying he's an alt. He's an alt.
He wasn't very
skilled. He scored one of the biggest goals in that 35-game streak that kept the streak.
Ken Morrow scored a goal against the Rangers once, an overtime goal too. Like it happened.
He was way more skilled than Ken Morrow.
Way more skilled than Ken Morrow. I don't know about that.
I mean, no, offensively. Let's look. I'm not more skilled, but he was more offensive than Ken Morrow for sure.
Sure,
that's fair. A lot of guys were.
I mean, Wilson making a couple nice moves a couple times back in the day. Like he would actually like be able to beat guys with stick handling. You know, like from
he had more goals than I thought. I give him credit.
Yeah. He was not bad, and he obviously was a tough guy. And like Dan said, scored goal. Like I guess it was like game 25 or somewhere around there.
The 1-1 tie against Pittsburgh.
Yeah, with the goalie out, 1-1 tie. Look at this. You got the Wendell Clark jersey back there.
I will say though, he has more goals than I remembered, so I'll cut him some slack.
Autograph, Wendell Clark. That's so funny. I never even put that together. You guys with the Yankees and Wendell Clark.
So let me ask Dan before you ask him. So we were talking the other day, Dan, and Pelle Eklund came up, and I wasn't sure. None of us were sure if he was in the Flyers Hall of Fame, and he's not. And so the next guys that could be in there. I said, so you're trying to tell me, Ek, that you would put in Pelle Eklund over Simone Gagne, and he said yes. So I'm curious as to your take on that.
That's a good comparison. I think I will, because those Flyers teams were outstanding. I mean, you went to the Cup Finals against Edmonton, and that year in '87. I mean, he was the leader on that team. As far as the go-to guy, I mean, that lifeline with him and Prop and Hackett was mission critical to all their success. But yeah, I think that he kind of, he was the one pure scorer that they had. The other guys were still like kind of making the transition from the Bruns bully days, at that point.
But Ek has overrated him to the point where he said if what's his name, the centerman
Tim Kerr was healthy his whole career.
Yeah, if Tim Kerr was healthy for his whole career, Pelle Eklund would be a Hall of Famer, and that is such a stretch that I have to see if you're another human that believes that.
I mean, I can understand the argument. If is a tough word.
Big tough word. And it is a stretch. I'm not saying it's like he's like a first.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that when they were together.
When they were together, they were lethal. And and even if you gave the Flyers Kerr in those finals, what might have been.
Sure. Yeah, Kerr was amazing. I agree.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, except when the Rangers got him, his back was really bad at that point.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, could you imagine in a time when you couldn't like clutch and grab with Tim Kerr, like if Tim Kerr come out, before with no 2-line pass, no clutching and grabbing.
He'd be hard to
people knew they could just hang on his shoulder. They would just literally try to like dislocate his shoulder on every shift. They were just
pulling. But he couldn't skate that great, so he would have to be like a better skater today.
Yeah, he'd have to be a better skater today for sure. Mm-hmm. But his ability around the net,
it was great.
In tight. I could think of I think Tavares has that kind of ability around the net. But there aren't that many players that are that.
Esposito had that. He reminded me of Phil Esposito because he was a bigger guy with great hands.
Yeah,
it's good. You put him around the net, and he was dangerous as hell.
Yeah, today like Corey Perry, we saw some of those hands like around the net with Corey Perry in the finals this year in the playoffs. But Kerr was crazy good. I mean, was the 5 assist game, Dan? Like where Eklund had the 5 assists in the playoffs against
the Rangers, where Kerr scored the 4 goals in the second period.
Yeah, against the Rangers in that playoff.
Rangers, yeah.
I mean, that was the time. I mean, points like that, like people just don't remember. Eklund had such a weird, not a weird career, but didn't they didn't have like that like 1 year. I'm trying to think of his most points he had. It was probably in the 90s, right? I could look it up, but
I would guess it's somewhere in that range. Yeah.
let me bring something Flyers related up.
Yeah.
Over the last couple of days. It was sort of weird, and because it's not the anniversary, but our coworker Bill Meltzer posted a picture of the Flyers carrying around the Stanley Cup at the Odd in Buffalo in '75 after they won in Game 6. And then Bernie Parent on his Twitter feed posted a picture of the famous Fog game. It was just it was just so weird. Like all of a sudden, like we're getting 75 references in the middle of December from Bill, who writes for the Flyers as well. But Bernie is like posting. That's like probably other than getting poked in the eye, that was probably Bernie's worst memory as a Flyer was the Fog game.
Fog game, yeah.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. Just looked up here. So Pelle Eklund, as a rookie, had 51 assists as a rookie.
Right.
But he didn't win the Calder.
He didn't win the Calder. No, that was.
Yeah, remember he was in an offensive era.
85, 86, but still, to put up 50 is. I don't know of any Flyers forwards who have had 50 assists as a rookie.
No.
I don't know if there's any others like that.
Lindros definitely
50 assists as a rookie.
He might have.
I'll check.
I think he did.
I don't think it.
Yeah, he actually might have.
He might have. Yeah, maybe.
He might have because he ended up with over 100 points. So.
Yeah. His biggest assist season was he had 51 in 85, 86. He had 51 in 88, 89. He had 50 in 90, 91. And those are all like where he played 70 games and with 51 assists as rookie.
Right. Yeah, they played fewer games.
Lindros had 34 assists as a rookie, and then went 51, 53, 41, 68, 47. So
he's a year off. Yeah.
Yeah,
no, it's a lot for a rookie. Look, he's a good player, but I made you the comparison. I said, hey, Ron Duguay was a real good player too, but he's not making any Hall of Fame. And I looked it up, and Duguay torched Eklund compared to numbers wise.
Actually, Eklund did win the Calder as a rookie.
He did?
No, he had five votes. Five. I'm sorry, I was looking at this thing wrong. He had 5.
I don't think he did.
Sorry, I'm looking at this, and then
alternate universe or something.
About him, he had Eklund had
That was in Stratomatic.
Yeah, right. There were 3 years Eklund got votes for the Lady Bing, and then 1 year in 90-91, which was probably his best overall season as a Flyer. He put up 16. He only had 69 points. So that was the most points he ever had. But he did it in 73 games, but was nominated for the Lady had 11 Lady Bing votes and 16 Selke votes.
Yeah, Selke, I could see. I remember, and that makes sense to me.
But if you remember, he came over as being touted as the Swedish Wayne Gretzky. That was like the whole. No,
negatory.
That's not true. That's true. I'm right about that.
The Swedish Wayne Gretzky was Kent Nielsen.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, he's right about that. X. Sorry.
Yeah.
Now that he said it, yeah.
But he came over. Yeah, that's right. I do remember that now. Sorry about that.
He did come over highly touted though as an offensive.
Maybe he was the Swedish Bernie Federko.
So to me, I don't know. I think, and you guys were comparing him to other players, like you said, Suns.
Well, I said Duguay, and then when I looked it up, Duguay had way more numbers than Duguay had a 40-goal season.
Yeah. He was more of a goal scorer than.
Oh, he had more points too.
Yeah.
And before I make this statement, I'm gonna look up his stats to see if they're comparable. But
I'll tell you who's. Go ahead, Mike. Sorry, I was gonna say I thought of somebody whose stats might be comparable.
Yeah. And his core years or his good years were about the same, 5-6 seasons. But if you remember a guy who he actually played for the Flyers for a while, but then went to the Blues, was Blake Dunlop.
I remember the name.
Yeah, Blake Dunlop was basically a 20-goal scorer with 50 to 1 year. He had 67 assists with the Blues. He was basically, because Eklund is not a big goal scorer. He's more of an assist first.
This guy, two-way player.
Right.
Craig Janney.
Yeah, but Janney was a 100-point guy. I'll give you somebody who I think is comparable. Came over from Sweden a little earlier, but had injury problems. Ulf Nielsen. I think you could look at that and say they probably had similar points because Nielsen missed time in at least 3 seasons that I can remember right off the bat. So before the Potvin injury, so that's
right.
He was highly touted. There's no doubt.
Yeah. Well, I think people
the guy.
And I think
Randy said most assists by a Flyers rookie is Dave Poulin. I wouldn't have guessed that.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
it's funny you said that. I was thinking that Poulin had a big year when he was a rookie. So
Yes, I wouldn't have guessed Poulin though. That's an interesting one.
That was also with Kerr, right? Was Kerr as a rookie, I guess? Was Poulin with Kerr as a rookie?
I don't think so. Right? Because wasn't Poulin?
I'll check.
It was a year after.
Okay.
I'll check.
Who was Poulin playing with, getting all those assists? Prop, I guess. Prop.
Yeah, Prop.
Yeah, I think he was. He was playing with Prop at least, because the Prop Poulin Kerr line obviously was the big line for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. That's I appreciate. I think that people just don't, and also I think what Dan said.
I think
really
Dan put perspective on it, and that was good.
Kind of sums it up perfectly in that the Flyers didn't have a player like him. Like that was the thing that came over that was really unique about him.
Yeah.
They hadn't had that kind of player. They didn't.
Well, the NHL didn't have a lot of players like that. Let's be real.
True.
Until the Swedish invasion from the Rangers, and then a bunch of guys started coming over, that was great for the league because these guys were better at a lot of the little details. They were more exciting. They were better passers than a lot of the other guys.
The funny thing is that it took a while for the Swedish invasion to happen, and you got to remember, Boreas Salming was the first one.
Yeah.
He came over in 73. And until really the late 70s, because a lot of Swedes, Nielsen and Hedberg played for the Winnipeg Jets and the WHA. I think it was more until the WHA merger with the NHL in 79, there really wasn't a widespread. There was Salming. They brought Hammerstrom over, and he went back to Sweden because he didn't fit. I think it was Juha Viding with the Kings. With the
Kings, yes.
Yeah, but there weren't that many Swedes early on, and then it was mostly in the late. So it took 4 or 5 years for the hardheads in the NHL to say, because remember at that point you had Don Cherry calling them chicken Swedes.
Sure.
The Flyers were trying to run Salming out of the league, especially in the 76 and 77 playoffs, until he decided the only way he could defend himself would be to stick somebody's stick in somebody's face. And that was the only way, then people would stay away from him because he was known as basically as a swordsman.
Yeah.
So, but there was a 4 or 5 year gap until they really. Yeah, Tommy Bergman. Somebody says in the chat room, Hockenlube was
Matt Naslin's another great one.
Naslin, but those were Naslin and Lube were all in the early 80s.
I'll tell you what Nielsen and Hedberg did for the others though, because I had interviewed both of them for various books, and they really held the Rangers up for cash, like they did. And I remember when the story broke, and I remember reading it probably in Newsday or the Daily News. It was the first time I could recall hockey players getting touted for having multi-year deals, multi-year deals for like $100,000 a year.
Right.
Like that was a lot of money back then.
Right.
Oh yeah. No, a ton of money back then. Yeah.
So that's what they really paved the way for that. And they did produce, obviously, but yeah, if they didn't produce, I kind of wonder what would have happened to the Swedish players in the NHL though.
Well, it was always what back then was kind of cool about it is when you had these players coming over from Europe, there really was like more of a mystique about it because you had no idea what they were. Like there was no.
You didn't get to watch games.
There was no YouTube videos of them. They played. They were like they could have been coming from Mars. Like they were completely. It was just cool because what are they like? You knew that they were going to be fast. Usually they were fast.
There were a number of stories like that. I remember like the mysterious first round pick that the Sabres made in 1981. Scotty Bowman picked a kid named Yuri Dudacek, and it was like I think he was Czech, these great stats. There's only one problem, and obviously the wall was still up, so getting him out of Czechoslovakia was almost impossible. And the only other problem was his father was a colonel in the KGB. So it was impossible. They were never going to get this.
You're never going to get him out of right.
You're going to take him in the 6th or 7th round. Fine, that's a throwaway pick. Yeah. Another one that I always laugh at is Miroslav Inacek, the brother of Peter Inacek. Now, Peter Inacek was a second round pick of the Leafs. He did the pick they got from the Flyers for Darryl Sittler. Had a good career with the Leafs, and everybody started hearing all this stuff about his younger brother Miroslav, who I'm looking up the stats right now, scored 22 goals in the Czech league, and oh my God, he's going to be so great. And they got him over. He comes over, and I'm pretty sure he scored 2 goals in his first NHL game against the Habs. And it was like Fabian Brunstrom with the Dallas Stars. He scores a hat trick in his first game. Everybody thinks the guy is going to be unbelievable. And then he didn't score for 20 straight games, and he was nothing.
Yeah, like Funky has a good point. Like Hedberg, Nielsen, and Bobby Hull are all still friends. Like they were all in the WHA. They were amazing.
Yeah.
When I say come over, I mean to the NHL.
Right.
I don't mean straight from Sweden. But the one thing that the Swedish athletes did that the Americans didn't, that made them, I think, faster and better and different, was their bike work. And Nielsen told me that both those guys, him and Hedberg, would ride in the mountains. They would do those kinds of things. Hockey players were not doing that for training.
Yeah,
they were doing other things, and they weren't doing that.
Well, what was interesting about them too was their feet being a lot better because they grew up so much soccer. And there was
I could see that.
There was a definite soccer element, Eklund, one of the players, Ilkesen style. I'm thinking about guys the Flyers had who back then, who just would do incredible things with their skates, just incredible moving the puck to their sticks with their skates, different things, way more than you would see, North American players doing it. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, ironically, Rick Vive just released a book, his autobiography. Scott Morrison from Sports, formerly from Sports, that helped him write it, and he was talking about psalming, and psalming, and any athlete that would do this now would basically be excoriated by the media and by the fans. Psalming, like when they would go out to Vancouver on the day of the game in the morning, would go to Whistler and ski. He would ski all morning, come back, take a shower, and then play in the game. And he would do that multiple times a year. Obviously nowadays, you do that, you could risk tearing a knee or whatever. Yeah. But he was such a ridiculous athlete that he would go out and then he would play 30 minutes a night with the Leafs. I mean, he was just an amazing, and it's a shame that he never won in Norris because he was one of the best defensemen.
Yeah, he was good. I remember him. I remember the scar.
One of my favorite moments about this, and then we'll move on, but about this kind of thing,
he was different to watch than a lot of other guys.
It was. This moment definitely kind of defines Dan to me too. So the 1980, I guess it was 82 Stanley Cup final. The Oilers were one of the 85 or 87. 80, I think it was 85.
Well, 87 was Flyers Oilers.
Yeah, I know where you're going with this.
You know where I'm going with this, right? So we're sitting up in our seats, section 35 there, and Dan's like, I'm really excited to see this guy that the Oilers just brought in. I'm like, they just brought him in. It's like, this is the Stanley Cup final. He's like, yeah, he's skating on the line. Not too bad. He's skating on the line with, Gretzky and Curry. That was Dan.
Asa Tikkanen. His first games are in the finals.
I had never heard of him before. Dan had heard of him. You'd had at least, because you were an Oilers.
At that time, I would never have heard of him either.
You were an Oilers guy too, so because you're your love of Gretzky, so you knew a little bit about him. More than. I mean,
it's not like today where you had
to have read the Hockey News to know anything about him. Honestly,
right? Exactly.
Right, and but it was just, this guy, they bring him in. What a start, Stanley Cup Finals. You're on the line with Gretzky and Curry. That's your first NHL game. I mean, I don't think anybody can say that the more interesting, exciting way to enter the NHL than Esa Tikkanen did.
Right,
that was insane. But all right, so let's move on to some of the a little bit of the Where do I want to go first? Mike, where do you want to go first here? Because I have a couple.
Just extending on the Pacioretty stuff.
Yeah, let's talk about Max Pacioretty.
Actually, heck, one more thing.
Yep.
Because I asked him about it. Do you remember who blew a kiss to Esa Tikkanen in '94?
Blew a kiss
on the ice.
Would that be Theo Fleury?
Susan Sarandon.
I guess
no, it was a player.
Who is it?
Keith Jones.
Keith
Jones. Nice.
Keith Jones. I thought it had to be a battle of Alberta.
I did ask him about that once in the box. It was pretty funny.
That's very
in the press box.
No, okay, so
Max Pacioretty.
Well, okay, this is the interesting thing because you reported it, and then a lot of other people reported it regarding Pacioretty and Marchessault and even Marc-Andre Fleury being shopped by the Golden Knights. And then apparently Bill Foley, the owner of the Golden Knights, goes on Vegas radio and says, quote, Patches is not being traded or is not being shopped. And now this is okay. We can apply the same rule to owners as we've been talking about for eons about general managers. When their lips are moving, they're lying. But this is the case. Bill Foley, I talked this over with Russ. Bill Foley has definitely been front and center when it comes to this guy is out there, let's go get him. And I think it's gotten to the point now where it's screwed over George McPhee and Kelly McCrimmon, because I'll keep saying this. Was the acquisition of Alex Pietrangelo a good acquisition? Hell yes, because he's one of the best defensemen in the league. But if you're having to trade Nate Schmidt just to shoehorn him onto your roster, and now because you didn't trade Marc-Andre Fleury, you're going to have to trade a guy who scored 35 or 33 goals last year. You shouldn't have signed Pietrangelo in the first place if this is what you had to do.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, Dan, what are your thoughts on this?
It's funny. I look at all the things that they're doing, and I kind of think that the honeymoon is over for that team. They're now just a regular team in the league, and they face the same challenges that everybody else faces. They caught lightning in a bottle with a lot of those deals that they made with teams such as the Wild, trying to protect a player and having to give up more value than the one player that they would have lost, and they did that multiple times. And look what it got them. I mean, it jump started their existence, but now they're in a situation where they're just a regular team now, and they have to play by their same rules as everybody else. Not that they didn't have to play by them, but they kind of got an infusion of good fortune from the very beginning. And now they've got to deal with all the things that all the other teams have to deal with.
Exactly. And they have an owner who is kind of like the closest thing to an Ed Snyder that we have in the NHL right now.
He is, and he's causing problems. Actually, the kiss was the other way around. It was Tikkanen sending it to Jones because Jones was bothering him.
Yeah, that makes more sense.
Yeah. I just was getting it mixed up in my head. I had to look it up to make sure because I wasn't even 100%.
Yeah, Essa was a rat of the highest order, so that makes more sense.
But listen, Jones was, he had his moments too, actually. But
exactly.
Jones does laugh about it. But no, as far as this situation with Foley, I feel bad for McPhee because I think when the market hit, I think it's fair to look at the Vegas Knights and say, hey, what do they need? A linchpin defenseman. Well, they got one, but the problem is now they've whittled away at their depth, and they're going to lose more of it to stay under the cap. And so that's their biggest problem now is they had these guys. They really should have traded them before they signed Pietrangelo. And if they couldn't trade them, they shouldn't have signed them, but they did. So now they're doing it backwards, and that's what's hurting them.
Well, okay. It's not a situation because you have an owner who's older, who wants to win.
Right.
It was like, I got to win one more. I'd had to win one more. Like he had his 2 Stanley Cups very early. Didn't enjoy them maybe as much as he wanted to because they were so early in his time there, and then wanted to win more. And with Foley, you've got a guy who is older too, who had also got a taste of going to the Stanley Cup Finals. And he's like, they're doing the kind of things that the Flyers with Ed Snyder would have done. Like the Pietrangelo signing is that's an Ed Snyder signing through and through to me.
Yeah, but there's also another dynamic going on here. I mean, okay, so they signed Pietrangelo, and what do they do at the same point? They trade Schmidt for a draft pick. They basically gave him away. And I said, well, they needed to improve their blue line, but that included keeping Schmidt. So now they've improved, but not enough, I think, to be what I consider a Stanley Cup level defense. Then they give away Paul Stastny for I think it was Carl Dahlstrom, who's at best a 7th defenseman. So they gave away a guy who was making $6.25 million, and it was not a bad forward, but they had to get rid of him for cap reasons. And now on top of that, they're going to trade a Marchessault or a Pacioretty or find somebody to take Fleury off their hands. The reputation, and Brian Burke said this morning, the reputation that the Vegas is getting from the fact that they go out, they trade, they sign Schmidt, he's part of the core group. Marc-Andre Fleury is the MVP of the team. Now all of a sudden they trade Schmidt for nothing. They bring all these other guys in. Now they're trying to trade Fleury. They're undercutting their own credibility, and free agents who see this are going to say, I'm not going to go there because in 2 years I could be somewhere else.
Not just that. I mean, we talked about McCrimmon is really gotten a bad reputation among other GMs. Like talking to people, they just didn't like the way he handled things. Like he was really very jerky about a lot of stuff in terms of the Marc-Andre Fleury stuff, in terms of other stuff too. McCrimmon, I just heard from GMs, like 3 guys, and they were telling me about talking to other guys too, who said, yeah, McCrimmon is just a bad guy, which is not really normally fair. They just really thought, and you don't hear GMs ever say that kind of thing about other GMs ever. So and I think a lot of it is because the pressure's on McCrimmon to do so much for so little at times. And to Dan's point, they have literally absolutely taken the honeymoon off by trading like a lot of the magic and away. Like basically, if you move Schmidt, who was one of their big guys in that initial, like one of their big time team leaders in that run, you've been shopping Marc-Andre Fleury. You put Marc-Andre Fleury on the bench, which to me is the baffling thing in the playoffs. How they handled that situation was horrendous. And he's like basically their captain. Like you can throw a C on Marc-Andre Fleury, but that's how much respected on that team. You just screw him out of a job. Try to trade him openly. Try to trade him. Can't trade him. And now you're talking about moving Marchessault, like another part of that initial Vegas like magic or whatever.
And Fleury was the face of it. He's the face of the franchise. He's
the first guy no longer.
But yeah, he's in no longer. But that's that mystique that they had in the Magic.
It's killing. I mean, it's killing the thing. And in a lot of ways, I think hockey's a bit. Hockey times is forget like the emotional aspect of hockey and like how we put together a team that actually likes each other. How much that can mean. It can mean a lot. It can mean a lot on the ice.
If this were a normal expansion franchise, like Cody Glass would have been the face of the franchise. But now because they've gotten so many veterans that their best first pick is just like another guy until he proves he could play at an all-star level, which he's not really gotten the chance yet. Maybe this year he'll get the chance.
But how does he not get a chance on an expansion team, like you say, Russ? Like how does Cody Glass get a chance on an expansion team?
Well, I know, but that's how backwards this is.
But like, to Vegas's defense, what they did in that first year was not sustainable. You could not expect that team without improvements to go on that kind of run again. So, so adding Pacioretty and trading some of your young assets, adding Stone and trading young assets, those are fine, and signing the long contracts. But at a certain point, you need to stop and just keep those. You
got to pay attention to your chemistry at some point. Like they didn't pay. There's been no attention paid to chemistry. This is like a complete, like a fantasy hockey pool type thing. The moves they made have been all about that. And also on top of all that, the biggest thing they do is in firing Gallant, who is like the guy who did an unbelievable job there. You're in first place and they fired him. There's certain things to me that they're like, and it feels to me like Foley has like a grass is always greener on the other side type attitude about life. Like, he doesn't realize what he has and he sees what he doesn't have, and it's just like, I'm going to go out there and get Pietrangelo. Yeah, that's great. He's probably like 30% better than Schmidt, but he's still not. It's still like, if you're getting rid of Schmidt, like, what are you doing? Like, you're not improving. I mean, you're improving a little bit.
Schmidt's making 30% more than Pietrangelo is making 30% more than Schmidt, and so
it's the same thing. And at the end of the day, like, what have you done? And I think that and people, some of my Blues friends and stuff like that, people I talk about in St. Louis, they're like, yeah, Pietrangelo is a great defenseman, but nowhere near worth the money they signed him for. They're like, even here, like, they're capped and everything like that. But there were times before. I think I've told you this, but like the guy who runs our website. Not runs our website, but developed our website, Chris in St. Louis. And I was going back with my text with Chris. Like, I texted him and I FaceTimed him from the ice of the Stanley Cup. When the team was Stanley Cup, I was FaceTiming him walking around and just kind of giving them a feel of what it would be like to walk on the ice, which I thought was really cool. And I was looking back at my texts like a couple months before that, and it's like, can we please trade Pietrangelo already? That's what go back in February and January. That's what they were saying. And that's that's a crazy thing.
In November of 2018, when St. Louis was last place in the Western Conference, before they made their big run, they were talking about trading Pietrangelo to Toronto for William Nylander, who was holding out. And I mean, how would that have changed? I mean, I don't think St. Louis would have won the Stanley Cup with Nylander, but I think he would have been a good addition. And I don't know if the Leafs would have won, but that's the what if. But they kept him, and then they called up Binnington, and it's history. But
I mean, they won the cup.
You know what it is? Like, I get what Vegas was looking at. Nate Schmidt was really overplaying his hand because they forced him to in the role he was playing. Right, that really isn't play into his talent or strengths. And with Pietrangelo, he's a lot like Ryan Suter. You could count on him for the minutes. You're going to get some points. You're not going to get amazing offense out of him, but you're going to get some physicality, and he calms down everything on the ice. So, those are all good things. It's just Vegas the problem with Vegas is when they sign contracts, and again, I will hold McPhee a little bit accountable to this, they always seem to pay their guys the maximum that they could ever earn right out of the gate. Like Marchessault, you would never pay Marchessault any more than he's making right now. And it just seems like that's what they do with these guys, and then it gets them in trouble.
Well, I would hope that Peter DeBoer does not go and try to put like a number one pair of him and Theodore together, because that pair would have to play 30 minutes a night every night for them. Yeah. They should split them up and have Pietrangelo playing with like Braden McNabb or with Alec Martinez. And
I think you put him with Martinez. I think you put McNabb on the second one. You've got White Cloud who could play on your third pair. Yeah. It's a much better defense than it was. It is. And
it is. No question. But they haven't really, they haven't really lost because they've been giving up too many goals. This is not like the team that, that's not necessarily this team.
But they were relying. I tell you what they did lose on. They were relying on goal scoring that didn't happen for them. So, Pacioretty, expected goals, if you want to use that stupid stat, expected goals in the playoffs, they didn't get them. So now I think they're trying to cut down the amount of goals they give up.
All right, so places Pacioretty could go. And that's what I've been trying to look into like the last couple of days here. And it's hard to find because, first of all, everyone says that, Vegas is gonna have to hold on to like $2 million in salaries to make this happen. That they're not going to be able to move him for what? Because he's like a $7 million player.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So
I'll give you one place that was always rumored. I don't know now if they have the appetite for it, but he was always rumored to go to the Rangers. He's a Connecticut guy, but I don't know if Gorton wants a player of his age now. Now, clearly, if you put him with some of their talent, he's going to get more points than he's been getting in Vegas. That's obvious because Max Pacioretty can still score, but they definitely would need Vegas to eat some of the salary. And for what they'd have to give up, I don't know if the Rangers would really do that.
Well, I can't remember who it was that was offering this as a destination that made sense, but Columbus would make a lot of sense because Pacioretty can play both ends of the ice.
Yeah,
and they were talking about basically the fact that Mike Hoffman might not be a good fit for Columbus because he's essentially a one-way player, and Tortorella will never give the thumbs up to signing Mike Hoffman in Columbus because he'd be something right. But Pacioretty as a veteran guy would be able to fit in, give him the goals. But again, the $7 million salary, I don't know whether Jarmo Kekalainen would want to take that full.
I don't think they want to spend any more money. I don't even think they want Hoffman anymore. Like I think Columbus is going into the season with what they've got. I really do.
No, I kind of think that too. But to finish on this thought, I heard Boston as a possibility. And now, if that's the case, then that would be they'd have to do something to make it happen for $5 million. Florida's another possibility. Florida does need to pick up some offense for sure. They're losing Hoffman and Dadonov, and just not gaining anything from it.
Right. So if you trade Pacioretty and keep a couple $1 million, would they get Owen Tippett? Yeah, they probably could, but I don't know if in this era they're even going to do that because Pacioretty's not fast.
Right. But what about Nashville too, though?
Nashville,
is another.
And funny because he fits into Nashville's like.
Oh God, they need to stay away from this Nashville. They need to stop doing this.
And that's something the sticky scores. Like every one of their scorers is just like this will be another one because Pacioretty can go
in half when they go to Nashville. Just cut the scoring in half.
Figure out a way not to let them go cold at the same time. That's like the issue in Nashville. It's like. It's
the hot chicken, Russ. It limits them from being able to score.
I wanted to talk to Dan a second about the Wild too, because they were one of the things that McCrimmon was screwing around with was Billy Guerin and Marc-Andre Fleury. That was something. And at the end of the day, you end up with talent. And then I haven't talked to you about this. I wanted to talk about it. The idea that they kind of knight him as the starter immediately. They say him. They signed him for $3.6 million. That's fine. That's a reasonable contract. He's like he's like a 1A goalie, right? He's not like a starter, but he's going to be a starter. But Stalock, who was very good for you guys, that to me is bizarre to me that they come in and they tell Talbot he's going to be the starter, and that they have to do that. I mean, there was so many goalies out there. What do you your thoughts?
Yeah, it was interesting. And like you said, there was a lot of goalies out there, but I think that in the Wild situation, basically they got rid of Dubnyk. Dubnyk was making $4 million, so you got a little bit of a reduction in cost for your goalie.
Right.
I think it's more of a stopgap. Obviously, the Wild are really not. If they contend for anything this year, it's by more good fortune than actually the plan. So, they're never going to tell you that they're doing anything other than competing because they've got some big contracts that they've got to, sure. And an owner who's very into winning and putting butts in the seats and
right.
the best product. So, but they're trying to piecemeal some things together, and I think that this is a good example of that. The 3 years is more my question. I would have rather seen a 2-year and right. given Kakkonen a better shot at the position. Right. Stalock, yeah, he did a nice job of stepping up. However, he showed you in that short play-in series that he's not the guy when it comes to handing the reins to him. He just can't handle that. He's a great guy that you can leave him on the bench for 2 weeks and he comes in and gives you a great effort. And the players love playing for him. He's a great locker room guy. He's a great teammate. He does what you want. He's a perfect backup. And makes basically the minimum. So he's a perfect fit there. So anointing Talbot the starter, I understand where they're going with that, but I think that Kakkonen should be given every opportunity to get to earn that spot.
Well, Dan, I wanted to ask you about this because looking at their situation, they have 3 goaltenders under contract going into the expansion draft, and if I'm Guerin, I'm protecting Kakkonen and I'm exposing Talbot and Stalock because he's the youngest one of the 3. But the situation that I see as even more dire for them is you've got 3 defensemen that you have to protect because they all have no move clauses, and the one that either unless you go 8 players and 8 skaters and 1 goalie, you're exposing Matt Dumba because
they'll trade Dumba this year.
They're either going to trade Dumba or I think that they go the 8 skaters route because if you look at the players that they have to protect, it's not as dire. Yes, they could be leaving out an Eriksson Ek, but most likely they're going to protect him. So I think that's really the better way that they're going to go and protect all 4 of those defensemen if they don't move Dumba. Obviously that's been been the talk, but I think that they're not going to move Dumba unless they can get what they really want for him. There's no reason.
You know what, though, Dan? I think now when you go into the deadline, I think Guerin's going to settle and get what he can get for Dumba. Sure. Because again, I don't think they really want to protect him. Even though I like Matt Dumba, I think he'll pull a decent price still on the market. I still think that's the route they're going to go because I don't think he really wants to protect them. And I think he said all the right things about Dumba because Dumba is a great guy. He just wants to get rid of Dumba's salary, honestly.
The question is what do they want for him? Do they if they want a number 1 center, they're not going to get.
You have to see what the market is like. We can't even go. I can't even tell you, Mike, because what would have been traded for 2 years ago is not what's going to get traded for now. So I don't know.
Right.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And again, the number 1 center, who's out there trading a number 1 center? They just don't. That just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
But it like Russ said, it really comes down to what the market's gonna bear for him.
Yeah, and I think Talbot buys time for Kakkonen because even though he did well with the games that he played up with the big club, he hasn't played more than a full season of pro from what I remember. And so why not give him another season anyhow?
Well, this was his second year over here. But the one thing that stuck out with me with Kakkonen was his moxie. He really showed that he had a ton of confidence. And I'll tell you a particular play in his second game. The Wild were up, I think, just a goal. And I can't remember who they were playing against, but They pulled the goalie and they dumped the puck in, and he jumped out and fired it at the empty net. And I was like, oh, that takes some brass ones right there. Your second game, in the league, you're doing that. So, but I do like his moxie, and it is kind of interesting when he played his first preseason game under Boudreau, and he got lit up like right away. The first couple shots went in, and Boudreau kind of gave him a little lip service quick, and he really settled down. So. But I think that he's got the kind of the fire in the belly that.
Yeah, he's only played like 39 games and 34 games, so it would be good for him to get a little more experience.
Is there going to be an AHL for him? I mean, like, what are we looking at? I mean, like, where are we put him?
He's not going to get a lot of time in the NHL, like Mike said, because there's all those goalies. So I think if the AHL does happen this year, let him get another 30 games, and then if you see Talbot sagging, towards the playoff stretch, then you know what? You got a guy you can bring up.
And they're talking about a 40 some odd game AHL season from February to the middle of May. So, I mean, that's the plan right now, but plans can change. But Dan, let me ask you this though, because I wrote a preview about the Wild, and I looked at the changes that they made, and I understand the want of a culture change with Guerin there,
Sure.
but I didn't perceive Eric Stahl as being a problem in the locker room. He's never been that, and I think they got robbed on that deal because I saw Marcus Johansson play for over a year at the Sabres. He was terrible. He was ill-fitted at center. Supposedly they're going to use him at center, and I don't think that's a good deal. Bonino is a more veteran player, but I like Cunning's talent. So I didn't think they got the advantage there. Bukestad is a good roll of the dice. I like him as a player, and if he can stay healthy, that's good. I mean, The only move that they made that I really liked was finally getting Kaprizov from the KHL.
There you go. Well, I mean, Kaprizov is obviously the X factor that everyone here has been waiting for. So we can't wait to see what he can do. Obviously, the Kevin Fiala blossoming too. Has flown under a lot of radar, but he's one of the hottest players in the league the second half of the year and even into the playoffs that the Wild had. But yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, Eric Stahl, I think, was just that move wasn't really. I think was to change the feeling in the locker room. Obviously, they can't move Suter or Parisi. They tried to move Parisi at the deadline, but. I think it's trying to get those younger guys to step up. They had tried that before with that other core with Zucker and Niederreiter and Granlund and those guys, and it didn't work. And they've jettisoned them all out. So yeah, I think it's now trying to turn the room over to the next generation of Wild players. And I think that was part of moving Stahl there. And obviously this was going to be his last year anyway.
Yeah,
so,
right. Eric Stahl's a big personality. Eric Stahl's a big personality in the room. I mean,
yeah.
If you're a young guy, you might be less apt to talk up, about something if Eric Stahl's sitting next to you, like you're saying. I mean,
you know what it is, though. I think after he got Eric Stahl, I think Guerin recognized an aging star when he saw an aging star, and now that he's a GM, realized, okay, I'll take the benefit of him for a while, like you said, in the locker room, but at the end, I don't want to be stuck with him.
Right. I mean, I think,
and he had Bonino as when he was assistant GM of the Penguins, so he knows the character of Bonino. So I understand that move, and maybe Cunnin, they were going to be forced to pay him because he's an RFA.
They were definitely going to have to pay.
They were going to have to pay him, and I think that the X factor there is actually the draft pick in Kuznetsov that they made with that draft pick that they got.
All right, so
I think that they're. That's an X factor for him in that deal, and I think that Bonino too. I think I wrote it when they made that trade was one of the things that I think of Bonino too. That hey, the Wild being out of it at trade deadline time, they might move Bonino too. So,
I can tell you something. Oh, sorry, I can tell Dan something for Kuznetsov, who I can never pronounce his name. And when I spoke to Igor Larionov the other day, I spoke to him about him because he played so well in the Karjala Cup, winning faceoffs, doing a lot of little things besides the offense. He's only 5'9", but he's a really good player. Larionov loves him, Dan, to the point where when I do write about him, you're going to be surprised what what Larionov's plans are for this guy. So he's definitely an X factor in that. You're right.
Yeah. So I think that was really the move there, and that combined with Cunning's having to get paid.
Yeah, and also, I mean, not just Stahl, but you also Miko Koivu, another big presence in that room, is gone.
Exactly.
And those are two of them, and really respected guys. And I think
they played in playoff games, whether they were real or not. They were NHL playoff games, and so you got to give Guerin credit here. Like he has turned around the ship while he's doing this, while in progress. He's doing a pretty good job at it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I think what he does is really, from what I've heard at least about that room, is that they came off of a couple GMs that were like a little bit like suitsy kind of guys, really like Fletcher is quiet suit type guy. Guerin's a hockey player through and through, right? And he's a hockey. He's a hockey player first, and he's still a hockey player in his mind. Like he would if someone said you got to play, we got an injury, he would lace him up and he would play. And he's got such a presence in both as an NHL player, winning with Penguins like that, and in Hockey America, where he's such a huge person in for USA Hockey,
right?
That there's just so much respect that what he's done is he's finally given that team. It feels like a little bit of extra anger and edge to their game, and along with having a better time playing, just enjoying what they're doing more. Which I think the seriousness of the Wild and not having ever gotten past a certain spot, Dan, feels like that's so intense that in the playoffs they haven't had that success. That he's the kind of guy who can get in there and say, "Who cares? Who cares? We're just going to play."
Right.
Well, one other thing is that in a cap crunch world, next year they're going to have, because of expiring contracts, over $15 million in empty cap space. Yes. with Johansson, Bonino, Foligno, Bukestad, Patterin, all these guys. That's $15 million, and I don't know if, other than maybe Bonino at a lower amount, or maybe Foligno, I don't know if they're going to sign any of those other guys. So that's going to be a changeover.
But I'm telling you,
I'll
tell you what the Wild will do. After the World Juniors, I don't know what Lundell's salary deal is with Liga, but he's got 20 points in 17 games. He's going to come out of the World Juniors as one of the best guys. If they're able to bring him over, they're going to bring him over. That's my feeling. And I would put him right in the NHL lineup. I'd put him as a second or third line center, and I would never look back. And I think that's what could happen, but I don't know what Liga's situation is. Mike, do you remember if they were one of the ones? I know Alskov. No. Yes, no. I don't remember what their situation is, but if guys can leave there, I think Lundell will leave there.
And I'm checking to see whether he signed his ELC with Florida. If he did, then more than likely he would come over for training camp.
I think Florida will have him in camp. I do.
No, he did not. He did not sign his ELC, so he's staying over there.
He's staying there. I thought they would have signed him. Okay, interesting. World Juniors, there'll be some guys that come over though.
Zuccarello, what were your thoughts on that, Dan? How did that work out?
The signing was not the greatest because of the length of term. I mean, 5 years is. I mean, I love Zuccarello. I think he's a winner. He steps up big in big games. Though it was, except he disappeared come the that short series that they had with Vancouver. He was non-existent. I don't know. Obviously, he's going to miss the beginning part now with the arm surgery he had on nerve surgery. So it's going to open up a door for somebody to step in there. But hopefully he can come back and show some signs of what he was when he first came back after that trade to Dallas. The year before, because he looked like the real deal. He
had 15 goals. Like you could get 20 goals out of him.
Yeah, and he's more of a playmaker kind of guy too. Yes. So that if they can just get him in the right situation.
Was he getting power play time, Dan?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Was he getting power play time? Because he's awfully good on the power play. People forget.
He was, and then he got moved to the second power play, and then shifted off of there. But he started out on in the top six, and then he worked his way down to the third line, and they really had trouble finding a spot for him last year. So if he can work his way into, a regular line and contribute. Yeah, I mean, he brings a lot to the table. I mean, he's a guy that plays with an edge. He's obviously not a big guy, but he's a great playmaker. And some of the passes that he makes, you're like, wow, how did he see that guy?
Oh, yeah.
So,
yeah, that's awesome. All right, what else have we got to get going pretty soon here? The only other thing I would talk about is I mentioned today again Philippe Dagneau rumors that are out there. I like Philippe Dagneau, and I was kind of surprised to see this. He's paid this year. He's a UFA next year, and I thought Montreal was just going to get that done, but apparently they're having such a hard time getting it done that they're starting to talk to other teams about moving him. Thoughts on Dagneau?
I don't think they'll move him. I think he's too good on faceoffs, and I think they need him too much. By the way, I was getting Lundell mixed up with Rossi. Rossi, I think, will come over.
I think Rossi gets every opportunity. I think he gets every opportunity to make the team.
Yeah, because he did sign the ELC. I was getting that screwed up.
He did. He absolutely did. And
yeah. But I think they need to know. I get that there's trade value there, and maybe they don't want to give him a new deal because he has a new deal coming after this year, right?
Right. Yeah, he's going to be UFA, and
especially with their aspirations of making the playoffs in the Canadian division and them, obviously you've got Suzuki coming off the really good playoffs and Kotkaniemi as your 1-2, but Dagneau as the matchup center, as the defensive center with winning faceoffs.
Yeah.
I think what they're trying to do is get him to take a hometown discount. And the way the guy has played the last couple of years, sorry, Bergevin, you're going to have to pay the guy.
You're going to have to pay, right. And he deserves it. Yeah.
He does deserve it. He's actually been way better than advertised. I think he's getting better every year.
Yeah, he is. And he knows it. I think his agent knows it. And Montreal is trying to, Montreal's hoping that, this contract to come 1 year earlier, because they know that another year of him, he's going to be that much better. They're going to be up for that much more money. And I think that's why they're starting to either, and sometimes, you hear these rumors come out right before the guy signs, like this feels like it could be one of those things where it's like, okay, we need to get Dagneau. We need to make him realize we're serious. We could maybe move him. So maybe we can trade him. So see if Dagneau wants to stay in Montreal, which I think he does. So
you know what, Ek, though? I think Bergevin's losing ground on trying to keep guys cheaply. Now that, they have made the playoffs and they have gotten a little better, I think that's over. And I think that's why this is happening, because I think their top players now are going to want to get paid market value, because he's been signing guys under market value the last few years.
Well, and it's also this, Russ, when you go out and you're not paying your guys money, and then you go out and you trade for Josh Anderson and give him $7 million,
right.
7 times $5.5 million, and sign to Foley, the guys who are there are saying, what the F? What's going on?
Yeah, completely. That's absolutely the case. All right, all the time we have for today. Dan, so great seeing you. So great having you on. Gotta do this more often. Get on a regular basis. So much fun.
For sure.
So we'll be back again tomorrow. And we'll see. At some point we're going to have some news involving the return to play. At some point we're going to hear, and it could be today, it could be tomorrow, but I think before the weekend we're going to definitely see it. And but until then, remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey. We will